In today's world, according to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and CBS News, 75% of United States employees steal from the workplace.
Well, that is very encouraging.
So on today's show, we're talking about the importance of making sure that you don't let your employees rob you blind, with the best-selling author who is literally blind. Yes, folks, today's New York Times best-selling author, Jim Stovall, is blind. If you haven't heard his name, look him up on Google. That's Jim, Stovall. On today's show, Jim also breaks down his newest book, 100 Worst Employees, learning from the very worst how to be your very best.
Some shows don't need a celebrity narrator to introduce the show, but this show does. 2 men, 8 kids, co-created by 2 different women, 13 multi-million-dollar businesses. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Thrive Time Show.
3, 2, 1, here we go!
Started from the bottom, now we here. Started from the bottom, and we'll show you how to get here. Started from the bottom, now we here. Started from the bottom, now we here. Started from the bottom, now we here.
Yes, yes, yes. And Dr. Z, on today's show, we have a fabulous guest.
I mean, fabulous is really an understatement.
Can
you come up with a better adjective than that?
Let me say, this guy is reverse of an excuse. Let's just say that there's a lot of excuses we could have for not starting a company. We could say,
there are.
I'm too tired.
Too tired.
I don't have enough time.
I don't have enough time.
I don't have any money.
I can't find good people.
Or you could say, I'm blind.
You could.
And if you said that, I think everybody would pretty much say, you know what? Okay.
Now, you're talking metaphorically or physically?
Literally, physically blind. I think if you use that as an excuse, nobody would judge you.
Nobody
and today's guest earned his fortune after losing his vision. After losing his vision, he gained a vision for his life. Jim Stovall, welcome on to the Thrive Time Show. How are you?
Oh, Jim, come on.
I am great. It is great to be with you guys, as always.
Sir, I'm not sure if you're aware. Are you aware that you're a best-selling author?
Yes, I am. I get these little envelopes in the mail periodically that remind me of that.
Now, if you can't see, before we get into your new book, how do you, on a daily basis, work away at writing your books? Because how many books have you written now, Mr. Jim?
This is, I think, 46.
So with that many books,
wow.
What is your process like for writing a book?
Well, to me, and I'm embarrassed to tell you guys, as a best-selling author with 10 million books in print, when I could read the way you guys do with my eyes, I don't know that I ever read a whole book cover to cover. I was nearly 30 years old when I lost my sight completely, and I was not a reader. But after that, I discovered high-speed digital listening, and I read a book every day. There hasn't been a day in the last 28 years I haven't read a whole book cover to cover, and that changed my life and made me want to be a writer. And then I have some very talented people down the hall here. A lady named Dorothy Thompson I dictated over 40 of my books to in a 25-year period, and I write a weekly syndicated column, and we've done over 1,000 of those. And then 8 of my books have been turned into movies, and we write the screenplays. So for me, everything's audio. It's no different than talking to you guys. I just start, Once Upon a Time, and I end with They Live Happily Ever After, and then in between there's a book, and I don't understand spelling, punctuation, anything like that, and I have very, very talented people that fix all of those things, and I talk just like I'm talking to you.
Now, you said, and I'm not trying to pin you, kind of paint you against in the corner here, but I think you just said that you read a book every day, or you listen to a book every day. Did I get that correctly, sir?
Yeah, I do. I was a part of an experiment that was done with compressed digital audio when the digital world first came about, and they worked with me and several hundred other people across the country, and to see how fast can you go. And, and it's like boiling the frog. You just turn it up a little more and a little more and a little more. And, depending on the content, I can listen at 3.5 or 4 times normal speed. So, a standard audio book that might be 8 hours long, I can listen to in 2 hours, something like that. So, and I, like you, I get up early every day. I'm up at 4, and, generally I've read a book or the better part of a book before I even come to the office.
Do you have any type of device nearby where you could play us an audio excerpt of what that sounds like? Is that possible?
Let me see what I can do.
That's cool. Yeah.
Because if you did, I
want to read a book.
I get fixated on these ideas. When someone says something like, that's why I love interviewing people like Jim. When somebody throws out, hey, I read one every day, it blows my mind, and I almost can't recover
We're going to try
from it.
this audio over the phone, standing by.
Here we go.
He, the shower, and the demo work together, making Johnny during the drive to the police station. I remember seeing the resident advisor, a sophomore named Cindy, outside the security door on the third floor of the police station, called the public safety building. I wasn't prepared to see anyone with such a blanket.
There you go.
Whoa.
Well, that was profound. That left a profound mark on me.
Okay, that
Wow.
right there.
My frog is not burning as hot as yours. I'll promise you that.
Oh my gosh.
Well, I am glad. That is a book that was written by a gentleman that I'm not sure all of his content is ready for prime time. So we were out on a limb a little bit there.
Okay. Now, as a man who has earned wealth since going blind, to the listeners out there, because I want to get into your new book, but I want listeners to know where you came from. How did you earn your fortune? How did you earn your first $1 million? To walk the listeners through how you started your first business.
Well, quick story. I grew up here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I was a poor student. I thought I was going to be an athlete. My whole goal in life was to be an All-American football player and then go into the NFL and make my living doing that. And the scouts and coaches and people that monitor that felt I had the size and speed to do that. So I thought that was basically going to be my career. Then 1 year before going to play a season of football, every year before you go play big-time football, you have to get a physical. They want to make sure you're healthy before they take you out and try to kill you. And so during this physical, I was diagnosed with a condition that would cause me to lose my sight. And through a set of circumstances that would be a whole book and movie by itself, I switched over and became an Olympic weightlifting champion and finished my athletic career that way. And then by age 29, I did lose all of my sight and moved into this little 9-by-12-foot room in the back of my house. I thought I'd never leave again. I had my radio and telephone, my tape recorder, and that was my whole world. And the thought of running a television network with over 1,000 stations or writing books or speaking to millions of people in arena events would have been as foreign to me as going to the moon. And I had one great asset. Before I had lost my sight, that little room had been our television room in the back of our house. And it had our TV and the video player with all my classic movies I love, Jimmy Stewart and John Wayne and Humphrey Bogart and all those guys. And one day out of just sheer boredom, I put on an old movie, actually called The Big Sleep, Philip Marlowe story with Humphrey Bogart. And I thought, I have seen this so many times, even though I'm totally blind, I'll be able to sit here and follow along. And it worked for a little while, and then I was kind of following along in my head. But then I forgot what happened, and somebody shot somebody, and somebody screamed, and the car sped away, and I forgot what happened. And I said the magic words. I said, somebody ought to do something about that. And, the whole world is looking for a great idea, and they trip over one about 3 times a week. The only thing you got to do to have a great idea is go through your daily routine, wait for something bad to happen, and ask yourself, how could I have avoided that? And the only thing you got to do to take that great idea and turn it into a business is ask yourself, how can I help other people avoid that? The world will give you fame and fortune and riches and everything you ever wanted in your life if you'll just care about them and solve their problem. Because as in most things, Clay, it ain't about us. It's about them. And that was the beginning of my core business, the Narrative Television Network. And we make movies and television and educational programming accessible for 13 million blind and visually impaired people here in the United States and millions more around the world. If you put them all together in one place, it would be the largest television market in America, larger than New York or L.A. And it has been a tremendous business, and out of that came speaking and books and movies and the columns and everything else we do.
Now, you have written books with Steve Forbes. The Ultimate Productivity is a great book. That book talks about how you have to have enough insurance to have like a bad day and not a bad life. That was powerful for me. When I'm reading the book with the green cover and you're hammering home buying insurance. And see, up to that point, I was trying to get that cheap insurance.
Oh, yeah.
That insurance that doesn't pay out?
Sure.
Right.
And then I read the book and I'm going, I'm an idiot. And I went in and I told Vanessa, we need a lot of insurance.
Oh, yeah.
Well, why? Because the insurance guy sold us? No. Jim Stovall just sold me a huge insurance policy. And I'm just telling you, that's where I started diving into the Jim Stovall books. And so, Jim, every time you release a new book, I just want to have you on the show. It is kind of a standing invite. But this new book is called The 100 Worst Employees. Learning from the very worst, how you can be your very best. My friend, what inspired you first to write this book?
Well, about 5 or 6 years ago, I did a book with Express Personnel, the largest employment agency in the world, called The 100 Worst Bosses. And people from all over the world wrote these stories of their worst bosses, and you can imagine how horrific it was. And so the publishers came back to me and said, let's do worst employees. And I thought about it a lot, and I kind of combined with my friend and colleague from the National Speakers Association, Christine Sexter, and she works a lot in HR and with companies around the country, and through that we were able to get several hundred stories of the worst employees out there, and you can imagine they're sad, they're funny, they're humorous, but they're all instructive. And you know, Clay, there are people listening to us all across the country and around the world right now, and they are good, honorable, honest people in their own mind, and they wouldn't steal a pad of paper or ink pens from their office, but they'll constantly horse around for 2 or 3 hours a day on the job. And, you know, a lot of people right now are saying, well, my job's not that important. I have an entry-level job. You know, I could buy into that except for the irrefutable fact that the way we do anything is the way we do everything. You don't get to halfway do this and then do that with excellence. So if you're horsing around on your job right now and giving your boss anything less than the best, thinking someday I'll get a better job, then I'll get serious, or better yet, someday I'll have my own company, then I'll get serious. It doesn't work that way. That's like the guy standing in front of the fireplace saying, give me some heat, and then I'll throw in some wood. It doesn't work that way. I'm sorry to give you the bad news, but the universe was set up quite differently than that. And the way you do anything is the way you're going to do everything. So, you know, if you find somebody that's making $1 million a month and they're running their own hedge fund or great conglomerate somewhere, chances are that someday, many, many years ago, they washed dishes or threw papers, and they did that with excellence. And then that led to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing.
Z, before I start bombarding Mr. Jim here with questions about his book, I have some hard facts. Z, are you ready for some hard facts I prepared for today's show?
I don't want any soft facts.
Here we go. CBS News. These are all things you can verify. You can look them up. And, Devin, let's see if we can put these on the show notes. CBS News and teamed up with the U.S. Chamber to discover that 75% of employees steal from the workplace. Inc. magazine shows that 85% of job applicants lie on resumes. To hammer home Jim's point, the Ken Blanchard Institute there, the New York Times bestselling author, they interviewed people at 1,300 private sector companies, audited them, and they discovered that 41% of the average employee's day was spent wasting time, horsing around. 41% of the time was spent wasting time. More employees today quit than are fired, according to the Harvard Business Review. 18% of people at the workplace are viewed to be as insane, according to the Harvard Health publication in February. And 25% of employees now look at adult content at least once per day. 25%, according to the Newsweek article called iCrazy. What does that mean? Well, it means that there is a problem in the workplace, and Jim, your new book helps to help us vaccinate ourselves against the jackassery of the workplace. So let's talk about Chapter 1, the sloth. What is the sloth chapter all about?
Well, these are people that just are lazy. They're hiding. They're avoiding work. And everybody's looking for work, and then they quit looking as soon as they get a job, and they're trying to avoid work.
Oh.
And it's just amazing to me. People, they came, they applied, they dressed up, they wanted to get a job, and then as soon as they get this job, they ask, what's the least I can do? I do a lot of work now with Oral Roberts University at the Stovall Center for Entrepreneurship, and I tell the kids all the time, you and your parents or somebody cared enough about you to spend a lot of time and money to apply and come to school here, and then as soon as you get in, you spend so much time asking, do I have to go to class, and do we have to read this, and is this going to be on the test, and all of that stuff. And it's all about doing everything in your life with excellence. And, when I started my career with the New York Stock Exchange, and I had an investment office, and there was a guy in the next town that I worked with, and he couldn't get to work before 10 in the morning. He'd fall asleep in meetings. He was the lowest energy guy I'd ever seen. And I was trying to, talk up this guy and get him going, and so I tried to find something he was interested in, and I said, what do you like to do when you're not working? He said, I love to go fishing. I said, well, let's do that. And I could still see a little bit then, and I thought, I probably won't get killed. Let's try this. And he said, great, I'll be by on Saturday, pick you up. I said, what time? He said, 4:30. I said, in the morning? He said, yeah, 4:30 in the morning. Well, at 4:30 in the morning, this is a guy who can't get to work by 10. 4:30 on Saturday morning, he's out there. He is foaming at the mouth to get going. He is energized. He is serious. He is ready to go. I mean, we're standing out there in a frozen stream, and he is ecstatic all day. So for a lot of people, it's not just that you're lazy. It's not that you're not engaged. It's you're in the wrong place. Success in business comes when we get the right people in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing for the right reason. And once we get all those things to happen, we start to succeed. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was arguably one of the best basketball players to ever play the game. But you put him out at point guard, you got a heck of a problem. I mean, it's just not going to work for you.
Right.
So great coaches get people in the right place doing the right thing. And, when we run a company, that's our job to do. But then, some people, my mentor and friend, the late, great Coach John Wooden, had a sign over the locker room door that said, we coach everything here except effort and attitude. And you should be able to go into any job with maximum effort and great attitude and succeed at that job. They'll teach you how to do everything else. The problem is all the information in the world, all the training in the world will not work if you don't show up with effort and attitude.
Z, you have managed at this point, probably thousands of employees in your businesses, ranging from the auto auction to the optometry to the investment in the bank to the durable medical sleep equipment company.
Sounds like the Fisher guy may need a sleep study, by the way. Sounds like that.
He might need a sleep study.
Could be needing.
But you've been involved in a lot of different businesses.
Yes.
And I would like for you to ask any questions that you have for Jim, or because you guys have both managed a lot of people, and Z, you see it. As an owner, you see a lot of people that just don't seem to want to do it. And you've got a great team now, but it's taken you years to build that team. What questions would you have for Jim about building a team, hiring a team, motivating a team?
Well, I kind of want to go back to kind of the beginning when he was 30 years old and you lost your vision. What was the biggest thing that you had to overcome with that? What was the biggest thing you thought you would have to overcome? And then what was the biggest thing that you had to overcome when the lights went out?
Doc, that's a great question. I thought the biggest thing I would have to overcome was I couldn't read or drive. I thought, I didn't know any blind people. I'd never even met a blind person. So I thought, well, I can't read, I can't drive. And, well, here I am today. I have read more books than anybody I've ever met.
Right.
And the airlines tell me I have over 2 million miles with just one airline. So, I get everywhere I want to go, and I read all the books I want to read. The biggest hurdle I had to overcome then and now is lack of expectation. If you guys went home and sat in a little room and played your radio all day and didn't do anything else in your life, eventually your friends, your family, your loved ones would come over and say, hey, Z, you got to get out and do something.
Yeah.
Man. You're better than this. Let's get going.
Yeah.
If I did that, no one would ever say, oh, isn't it great? He can play the radio all by himself there. And, so you have to be totally internally motivated. And so as a blind person, that's one of the most important, because nobody expects you to do anything. Now, in certain negotiating situations, in certain competitive situations, it comes in very handy, because nothing more powerful than being underestimated by your competition.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Well, that's kind of a fun little side.
Jim, I had a thought for you, a little employment tip. If the whole best-selling author, movie writer career thing doesn't work out, the Miami Dolphins no longer require football players who can see to be on the team.
Yeah.
So I wanted you to know that.
Yeah, you can live your dream of being in the NFL.
If you want to be on the team, this is your year, Jim.
It's not too
I could probably do that. And in fact, the way they have played so far is still looking for their first victory. For all I know, they have some blind guys down there. They may well have that.
Well, let's look at it. He's a handsome man. You put him in aquamarine. That's going to be a home run.
He's a beautiful man. Just get him on the roster.
That's
Oh, man.
I mean, that's just good all the way around.
Oh, it's a blasty blast down there in Miami. Now, Josh, you are a guy who's a fan of Mr. Stovall here.
Absolutely.
And you're also an entrepreneur who has really found traction with your company, Living Water Irrigation, over the past couple years. And now you have employees.
We do.
Not one, not two, not three, but many. What questions would you have for Jim about managing employees, hiring employees, encouraging employees? Any questions at all about employees?
Sure. So, well, the first thing I want to say, Jim, is I love the story of Christopher. I'm man enough to admit this. It brought me to tears. I think that's a wonderful thing that all of our listeners could go back and listen to and really look into. I appreciate that. I thoroughly appreciate the book, The Ultimate Productivity.
Yeah.
It did a whole lot for me to understand the difference between being busy and being productive, because I was super duper duper busy for a long time.
You said the story of Christopher. What do you mean for the listeners out there that aren't familiar with the story of Christopher?
Jim, I'd let you wrap that up, because you can say much
Christopher
more.
is a story I tell. It's a true story based on a young man I worked with at a school for the blind. 4-year-old, as I was losing my sight. You can go to Jim Stovall, Stovall, jimstovall.com, and you can watch it there, or just search on YouTube, and it's all over the place.
Got
And
it.
I do it in a lot of the arena events, and it's become kind of a signature part of my arena events.
Okay, back to you, Josh.
So what I would ask you, and I mean, obviously you've had the card stacked against you, but never made excuses and went and did it. So if we have, as far as employees and managing staff, and because there's always the whole list of 17 billion excuses about my cat did this and my dog that, and I had to do this. And what would you say, or how would you encourage your staff to quit making excuses? I guess, would that wrap up that question?
I think everybody's passionate about something. And I always try to find out what my people are passionate about. The young lady at the front desk who answered the phone when you called, I talked to her one day, and she rescues dogs from pounds and rehabilitates them and gets them back out there. And that's her passion. She does several of these a month. And so we were doing a movie with Academy Award winner Louis Gossett Jr. based on my book, The Lamp. And we needed a dog. I said, let's put one of Beth's dogs in the movie. And this dog became famous and revolutionized her rescue efforts, and it's been a huge thing. And, then in the next office, there's a young lady. And I said, what if you could do anything in the world you want to do? She said, well, I'm a singer and a songwriter, and I've worked on it for years. And, well, it turns out she's really, really good. And we've done 8 movies, and 7 of them have her songs that she's either written or recorded in there. And 3 years ago, with a movie we did called Ultimate Legacy, she was nominated for the best original song in a motion picture by the Motion Picture Association. Next to her is a lady whose mother wrote poetry and then passed away, and she was so passionate about her mom's poetry. I said, why don't I write a book about this and put all of her poems in there? And then downstairs in our studio, there are people who use their voices on radio and TV throughout our area, but now they get to use that in a way to help blind people see. And I mean, it doesn't get much better than that, guys. I mean, we all like to make profit, we all like to make money, but we all like to do good work too. And I'm on the board, and I support a lot of nonprofits, but none of them do as much good as we do making money at Narrative Television. It's been an amazing transformation. So all of these people have found a way to fulfill their passion right here doing what we do. And the way you find this out about your people is you just flat out ask them. You just flat out ask them. And, I just don't think we can take excuses from people. If I left my wallet on my desk here, and then as my people came in and out during the day, if they reached in there on their way out and grabbed a $20 bill, I'd stop them. I said, hey, that isn't yours. But just by not being fully engaged, they can steal many multiples of that every day. And it's become...
Oh, wait a second. This right here, Jim, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I want to have you hammer home on this. This
Hammer
is big
home.
because I do personally, this is how my worldview, I view it as theft, just like you're stealing $20 out of my wallet if I see you doing nothing. It bothers the crap out of me. And I mean, in the same way that if I saw someone taking $20, that's how I feel when an employee's not making outbound calls or not answering the phone or not doing the checklists. Help fix the mind of some entrepreneur that doesn't view that as theft. Therefore, they're getting robbed blind. There's somebody who says, well, everyone gets distracted 41% of the day, Jim. I mean, help an entrepreneur sort through that.
Well, I used to struggle with that, and then I put in an employee stock option thing for our people. Several of the people that, you can call our company, and the phone's answered by a millionaire. I mean, we have had people become very, very successful at these sorts of things. And but I remember one of the first ladies that came to work for me. She was legally blind, single mom. She passed away, unfortunately, with breast cancer. Tragic story. She made me guardian of her little girl, and the little girl inherited those stock options, and that made her a very wealthy young lady. Well, when we had people downstairs that weren't getting their work done and horsing around and couldn't get to work on time, it finally got real clear to me when I took a guy out. And, I said, let's step outside here. I said, look, here's the thing. If you were stealing with me, I'd probably find a way to look the other way and wouldn't worry about it. But I am not going to stand by and watch you steal money from that little girl. She's lost her mother, her father, and everything. Everything she owns in this world is her percentage of this company. And you have the unmitigated gall to do anything less than your best. We're paying you better than the industry pays anybody, anywhere, at any time. And you're still stealing from that little girl. I'm not going to stand by and watch it. I'm just not going to stand by and watch it. And, if people have legitimate situations, we'll work around anything here. I mean, I get it. This company's run by a blind guy. There's not one person here that has a job that I could do. I don't know how to do anything. So we'll work around any personal situation somebody has. But you got to bring the effort and you got to have the attitude, or you don't get to stay here.
Now, Jim, I don't think that's. Go ahead.
That stuff is infectious.
I have a
you
feeling
let
you
that
had to
go
do
around, and it's like sports, guys. You get a cancer in the clubhouse, you get a cancer in the locker room. You just don't overcome it.
Jim, I've got a feeling though that wasn't completely correct. I have a feeling there's probably a few things you could do around there. I bet you could answer the phone. Let's just start there. You could work down the.
Yeah, you'd have to show me which button to push or something.
Oh yeah. There you go. Well, if it's an automatic phone button pusher, then maybe you could. But I had a question for you. You probably get asked this all the time. How would your life be different if you didn't go blind?
It's become such a part of my life. I don't think about it. Having the book out this month, I've done over 100 radio and podcast interviews, so everybody asks about it, and I appreciate that. It'd be strange if they didn't. But, I probably, I'd never read a book. If I could not have made it as a professional athlete, I would have gone back probably to the only thing I knew how to do before that, which was I was a construction worker. I shoveled concrete, and they paid me a little better than the other guys because I was bigger and stronger, and that was my career. I'd have probably done that till I went totally blind, and then I don't know what I'd have done. I had the privilege to come out and during my last year of college, I knew no one was going to hire me. I knew I had to start my own company. I remember going to my dad's office, and I said, look, after graduation, I'm not going to get a job, which is really thrilling for parents to hear. But I said, I'm going to start my own company. And he introduced me to a man who had third-grade education, had made $10 million during the Great Depression, gave 9 of it to charity, lived off the investments on that $1 million remaining, and worked for Oral Roberts University for $1 a year for the rest of his life. And he taught me how to be an entrepreneur, and that was such a big thing for me. And then years later, I wrote a book called The Millionaire Map about my journey from poverty to prosperity, and I talked about Lee Braxton, my mentor, made me read Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill's book, made me read it 3 times before he'd even talk to me. He said, we don't even share a vocabulary till you've read this book. And he made me read it 3 times, and I wrote about that in my book. And then the head of the Napoleon Hill Foundation called me and said, do you know that your mentor, Lee Braxton, was Hill's best friend? He said he gave the eulogy at Napoleon Hill's funeral. I had no idea they even knew each other. And now I have a 2-inch thick file of letters between Napoleon Hill and Mr. Braxton that were written throughout the 40s and 50s and 60s, and that is becoming a book that will come out soon called Napoleon's Bridge. But, the opportunity, guys, opportunities come disguised as problems. Every great opportunity. You show me somebody getting wealthy in the world today as an entrepreneur, I'll show you a problem. It all starts with a problem.
Jim,
I mean, see, if nobody ever had any eye problems, nobody's nearsighted, nobody's farsighted, he's going to have to go out and get honest work.
I may do construction. I may do construction.
Jim,
I may do
Jim,
construction.
let me
work.
tell you a story that I cannot prove, but let me tell you the parts of it that I can prove. I was going to college at Oral Roberts University.
Proof.
And a guy I knew of was dating Vanessa, the woman I'm now married to.
True story.
And so that relationship kind of ended, and I waited probably like an hour.
A good 30 minutes.
And I moved in there, went and pursued her, and we started dating. And I would drop her off to work at Dr. Robert Zellner and Associates. And the relationship was kind of rocky because she could see me. Now, I had asked her on dates multiple times. I've been rejected multiple times. True story. She'd rejected me, shut me down. These are all things she would verify. And anyway, I noticed our relationship started getting better after she started working at Dr. Robert Zellner's, because Dr. Robert Zellner, Vanessa and I were not married before she started working for you. We were married after.
Yes.
So I believe you gave her the wrong prescription for her vision, which has allowed her to not see, which has caused her to be married to me all these years. Sir, would
Bro,
you?
it was the only shot you had. I hate to say it, but it was the only shot you had at that.
It's just such egregious but beautiful malpractice.
That's collusion.
It really is. I mean, it's
beautiful.
It's like Mama, when the neighbor asked me, "How do I look in these pants? Do I honestly answer her, Mama?" It's one of those little.
You're
in
such
life,
a good guy.
Thank you.
Such a
thank
bad
you,
good
thank
guy.
You. But I had to give you a shot because you really had no chance other than that.
Jim,
so.
there's somebody out there that wants to read Think and Grow Rich, but it requires work. I remember my boss, Jeremy Thorne, at Faith Highway and Impact Ministries, said, "Clay, you're like a ship without a rudder, and you have to read this book, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill." Kind of an older-looking book, published originally, Jim, in the 1920s, maybe? What year would that
1937.
1937.
It came out in 37.
And it is, can you explain to the listeners what this book entails? Because my boss told me if I didn't read the book, I was fired. And I remember coming home and telling my wife, "I'm not going to read this book." And she goes, "Well, you have to read that book or you're going to get fired." I'm like, "Okay." I read the book begrudgingly, and now I've named my son after the book. My son's name is Aubrey Napoleon Hill, and I've read that book at least a dozen times. Can you explain to the listeners out there what that book is all about and how it changed your life? Because it is awesome.
Well, Napoleon Hill was born in 1880 in the Appalachian poverty in Virginia, and as a very young man, he became a newspaper reporter. He was actually there at Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, when the Wright brothers flew, and reported on that. And then one of his next assignments was to go out and interview Andrew Carnegie, the richest man in the world, founder of U.S. Steel. And Hill asked Carnegie the question we would all ask: how do you become the richest man in the world? How do you become successful? And Carnegie said that has never been quantified. But if you want to dedicate the next 20 years of your life to it, you can be the one to unlock that. And Hill agreed. And over the next 20 years, because Carnegie made the introductions, Hill interviewed Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, Alexander Graham Bell, and 500 of the most successful people of that day. It took 20 years,
so good.
And synthesized all that information into the book, Think and Grow Rich. It has sold over 100 million copies. It is still one of the best-selling books. And if you talk to multimillionaires around the world and ask them what number one book, if you only had one book you could read, what would it be? More than any other book, they will say Think and Grow Rich.
True. And what is your relationship now with the Napoleon Hill Foundation? Because Lee Braxton, correct me if I'm wrong, was a pallbearer for Napoleon Hill's funeral. Am I correct there? Am I getting that wrong? The guy
he gave the eulogy at Hill's service, and they were good friends. And I have done a movie for them, Think and Grow Rich, The Legacy. I have written several books for them. I have raised scholarship money for them, tens of millions of dollars. And, just making sure that book gets around the world to people who need it.
I absolutely love that about you. I've given away, I used to speak at Junior Achievement for years at Broken Arrow High School, and I've given away I don't know, maybe 500 copies of that book, because I would give away a copy of the book to every student in the class. And every year there'd be like 40 kids in a class, and I probably did four or five classes a year. But what you're doing for the Napoleon Hill Foundation is phenomenal. Devin, I know that you have a few questions you'd like to ask Mr. Jim Stovall, and Devin is a web developer on our team. And Devin, you have the man, the myth, the legend, the guy who might be the newest member of the Miami Dolphins, Jim Stovall here.
Oh, a lot of
What
pressure.
question do you have for Jim?
Jim, first, it's just an honor to be able to talk here with you. And, everybody that I've heard interviewed on our show, they all kind of build their day on habits that make them successful. What are some of the big habits that you've been able to build kind of your success on?
Well, first off, I get up very early in the morning, and it's not, when I say I get up at 4 a.m., people gasp and, make all kinds of guttural noises, and in reality, my alarm doesn't go on. That's when I wake up. I mean, I am up. I'm ready to go. I go into my office at my home. I have some quiet time. I go over my goals. I do a thing I call the golden list, which is a list of a dozen things I'm thankful for every day. And then I start my day. I read. I do my thing. I spend an hour with my bride every morning. And then I come to work. I have a very specific pattern we work on here. And it's all designed to keep me productive all day, every day.
Jim, your book here now, this your newest book, The 100 Worst Employees. I want to go rapid fire into 3 chapters real quick. Chapter 3, you talk about the scorpion. What's the scorpion, and why do we want to learn more about this employee personality?
Well, these are the people that will actually hurt you. These are the people that will attack you, steal your stuff, steal your ideas, take advantage of you. These people need to be avoided at all costs. And, when you find these people in your company, you need to, give them an opportunity to go to work elsewhere. And, these are people you need to get rid of. There are habits in there that are not fixable. These people are serial criminals and people we need to avoid in the workplace.
So you need to promote them to customer status.
These
Absolutely.
people freak me out, man. I'm telling you, the kind of people that will come to work and not like you and have the courage to complain about you but don't have the courage to quit, that personality type, that one is, I don't get that one. Now, chapter 16 is called The Mosquitoes, the Minnesota State Bird. The Mosquitoes. Tell us about the mosquitoes, the Minnesota State Bird personality. Back to you, sir.
These are people, mosquitoes are people that just annoy you. They're just all over all the time, and they just annoy you. They're always, and one of the things I love about being an entrepreneur, in my work and professional life, I can eliminate what I call the jerk factor. And one of the things you have to work here, particularly directly with me, is I got to like you. Why should I own this. I started this. Why should I spend my days?
Preach it.
With anybody I don't like to be around.
Come on now.
There are some people, there's somebody for everybody, I guess. But it's not me. And if we don't get along, it's just not working out. And so I hire slowly, I fire quickly. And having said that, there is nobody here now that hasn't been here 20 years. I mean, we don't bring people in very often, and when we do, we're very careful about it. It's like getting married. I mean, I spend more time with these people here than I do with my bride. And, so it's really important that you have a good fit. And the minute you find out it isn't a good fit, you have to employ a process I call accelerating your point of failure. Let's get you out of here. Let's go find the place that does work for you. And, and I have a friend, he used to work for me downstairs. It wasn't working out here. I went and told him, I said, I'm not going to get rid of you today. Let's find the right place for you. And he is now one of the highest paid people in media in our town here. I won't mention his name here, but, I fired him, and we remain great friends to this day. It wasn't a good fit here, but it's good somewhere else. And, there's somewhere for everybody, but that doesn't mean you get to work here.
Now, Jim, in your book, you talk about the chapter 15. You talk about the howler monkey. Can you tell us what a howler monkey is?
These are people who frankly, make a lot of noise. They spread gossip. They spread rumors. And I have a dear friend, Dave Ramsey, who's probably one of the leading financial coaches and authors in America. But he runs a huge company in Nashville now, 500 employees, started with just one. And, and it has been voted, I think, 8 years in a row as the best place in Nashville, Tennessee to work. And he has, with the exception of stealing money or sexually harassing people, those two things, and, that's not a policy. Those are crimes. Call the police, get them out of here. But except for those two things, the one thing that will get you fired every time is gossip. He has a zero gossip policy there. So what he means by this is if, you have a problem at work, you have two options. You can go talk to your immediate supervisor, or you can go talk to Dave. That's it. If you're talking to anybody else, it's gossip. This is not somebody that can do anything about your problem.
Real quick, Jim.
And you either go talk to your immediate supervisor, you go talk to the boss, or you shut up.
Jim, I don't want to gossip. I don't want to gossip. Z, I don't want to gossip. I feel a pull right now to just share a little bit of my Dave Ramsey gossip here. Okay, this is my gossip. You shut me down right away, Jim. This is what happened. Dave Ramsey is a man of class. He's a man with standards. Yeah. He's a best-selling author. He's a good guy.
He's a good dude.
This is true, right? There's no gossip here, right?
No.
And I reach out to him consistently to have him on my show. And let me tell you something. He has yet to confirm that he will be a guest on my show. So I have a reason to
scheduling thing.
There's a rumor I'd like to spread right now that Dave wants to be on my show, but he just doesn't know how to reach me. So what I'm going to do, Jim, is I'm just going to give this to you, and I'm not pressuring you on a podcast or a radio broadcast to invite. I'm not going to pressure Jim to invite Dave directly.
Zero pressure.
No. Because I don't have the kind of class, clout. I have nothing. I got nothing. I have no skill, no college degree, really nothing really working for me. My wife could probably get Dave Ramsey on right now, but I couldn't.
Can you talk 3.5 times as fast? Because he can still hear you.
So I would like, is it okay if we kind of spread a rumor that Jim Stovall may ask Dave Ramsey to be on our show? Can we spread that rumor?
We can spread that. Dave was going to be in my second Ultimate Gift movie. There's a scene. Your listeners who've seen that movie, there's a scene where a young guy during the Depression has to catch a freight train, and this old hobo shows him how to do that. Well, Dave was actually scheduled to play that part, but because we could only get this antique train one day, and Dave's schedule didn't fit up, it wouldn't have worked. So we hired this wonderful African-American gentleman to play that part.
He could have been a movie star.
He did an amazing job, and he ran and jumped and caught this train. And after he did that, the director turned to me and says, Ramsey would have never made it. He's too slow and white men can't jump. He just wouldn't have made it.
Z, let me ask you, what questions do you have for Jim Stovall about inviting Dave Ramsey on our show?
Well, I tell you what, since he can't jump and since he is a white man, we'll have to change some of the questions we have for him, and then you can't go out and do a dunkathon with him.
Oh.
So these are things that we had a whole schedule to do with Dave while he was here. You have the basketball court in your new pool.
We need to do a Dave and Jim duo show in the pool somehow. It's like we're calling them from the pool.
Yeah.
And it's Dave and Jim live.
Dave and Jim live from the pool.
Like we're in the pool, but
while Jim is dunking on him.
Right.
Because he's the athlete. So
we need to make this happen.
Yeah, that could have potential.
If you'll call Dave Ramsey and ask him to be on my show, I'll call the Dolphins and see if they'll let you on the team.
That's a done.
Man, now there's if I'm going to get Dave, it would be more like the Patriots or somebody like that.
Oh my! Shunda. There we go.
Okay, now chapter 7 of your book is called The Seagull. What's the seagull?
Well, these are people who, they annoy you, they steal, they do a lot of these things that unfortunately have become very commonplace. And I am amazed what has become commonplace in the workforce in America. I was talking to a guy the other day on a plane. And he said, man, I had a great experience at this restaurant there in San Diego where I was going. I said, well, tell me about it. He said, well, they had my reservation right. I made the order. The food came out right. The waitress got the order right. And the food was actually good. And the bill was correct. And I'm thinking, shouldn't that be kind of the minimal standard?
Yes, yes, thank you.
But we have gotten to a point where if a workman promises you to, that he'll be here on Thursday and he actually shows up and he does what he says he's going to do and he cleans up after himself and finishes on time and he's polite and correct, I mean, that's like 5-star. That's an amazing thing.
Right.
And, when did just doing your minimum job become outstanding? And that is what we're facing here in America today.
Preach that. I tell you what. And then if it's an employee, now they feel entitled to a raise. I'm like, no, you actually just did the things
See,
that I
you gotta feel the burn. You gotta feel the burn. Join Team Bernie Sanders. Feel the burn, baby. Feel the burn.
The burn. The burn.
Feel the burn.
and it's just, I don't know why that is, but it's kind of maybe they look around and see that they are head and shoulders above their coworkers because they're actually doing their job. And they never fail. So look at you and go, well, how's that? I mean, don't I get a little something for the effort? I'm going, yes, that's called your paycheck. And it hasn't bounced yet. Thank you very much. I'll see you tomorrow. Well done. And it's crazy, right, Jim? I mean, people are like you said, I mean, that restaurant that does just what we would think is the baseline, now all of a sudden, they're the creme de la creme.
Hey, let's talk about how you guys have never really met face-to-face except for one time. You're at a very fine restaurant in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Let's get back to that.
What was that restaurant called? The
Mahogany's.
Mahogany's. Is it the
Mahogany's?
Mahogany's?
Mahogany leather.
Very nice, dimly lit. You can't see each other. Everyone looks around like little raccoons. They're kind of like, can't see you. All
that's
squinty.
why you man-hug each other. You man-hug.
And so Jim apparently was a nice guy. He comes up to your table to introduce himself. Is this what happened? Right? Jim introduced himself to you.
Yes.
And you had a grievance with Jim.
Well, he walked up to the table and he was obviously had way too much to drink. And
Whoa.
No, I'm teasing Jim. No, we met casually at the restaurant in passing. I mean, I feel like of all the men in Tulsa that I don't really know that well, I feel like I know Jim that well. You read a few of his books, you see his movies, we have a lot of mutual friends, and so I feel like I know Jim.
So you and I have watched Jim's speaking events, and I just want to ask Jim this either to deflate Dr. Zellner's ego or to build it up a little bit here.
Uh-oh.
Jim, have you had the misfortune of listening to one of our radio shows? And if so, how many do you think?
Oh, no.
I have probably listened to 40 or 50 of your shows, and I have downstairs in our building, we have our studios, and past that, I have a private gym I built, and I'm the only one gets to go in. I have my own little locker room and all the weights and all the stuff, and I go down there, and while I'm working out, I listen to the radio. So for a number of years, I would catch you guys on the radio, and
there it is.
So I really enjoyed that.
Jim Stovall.
In fact, I remember a number of occasions. Well, I'm going to ride this bike until you guys get to the news at the top of the hour, and sometimes it drug, guys. I got to tell you, it's a little slow here. I mean, can we please get to the top of the hour?
Can we please get to the top of the hour?
Now, Jim, were you ever doing like a shoulder press or a bench press, some kind of press where you laughed right at the time that the pressing was occurring? You're like, 1, 2, and 1, 2, and then something funny happened, and you maybe have.
I remember the only time I remember breaking up with you guys was the first time I heard the Morgan Freeman intro, and that is one of my all-time favorites.
Okay. All right, we got him to laugh.
Well, there we go.
Well, Jim Stovall, we appreciate you so much, and Thrive Nation out there. If you have $16 in your pocket, $15.99 that you have access to, if you have a net worth of $15.99, if you don't hate your life, if you're not a communist, if you can go without buying a regrettable burrito, if you're the kind of person who can delay gratification and not get another regrettable Slurpee at Quick Trip or some other convenience store, if you care about your family and your future and your legacy, go buy a copy of 100 Worst Employees, Learning from the Very Worst, How to Be Your Very Best. And I don't want you to feel any pressure, but if you don't buy the book, I just sense that you may feel bad about your life for the foreseeable future. Z, do you agree?
I totally agree with that. So, I mean, and that's a small threshold to get over. I mean, just a few things just
don't throw your life away, Thrivers. Pick up the book.
Yeah. I mean, $16. I mean, it's really what Starbucks.
It's a Joe Montana theme.
Sconce
$16. 16. Come on now.
Pumpkin latte. I mean, really.
Jim Stovall, thank you so much for being on the show, and I apologize for my personality, and I'm glad you met Z here virtually over the podcast.
No, you guys are great, and Clay, I'm researching the possibility of 100 worst talk show hosts. So we may be back in touch on that.
Nice.
Well, save the top 2 spots for us. Hey, just make sure you give us like a really cool animal, Noma. I mean, make sure it's
no,
like
it'll be chapter
we don't
1,
want to be
the
like
butt
a
faces.
No,
The butt-
we don't. No, we don't want to be like a squirrel. I mean, like give me like something like a cheetah or a
Honey
a
badger.
honey badger or a
The man bear pigs.
yeah.
Yeah, or a southbound jackass.
Something like that. I mean, something cool.
Nice.
Something really cool,
Oh, yes. Shunda. Jim, have a great day, my friend. We appreciate your time more than we could possibly express.
You are great. Thank you so much, and we will be in touch, my friend.
Take care.
Take care, Jim.
Be well.
And now, without any further ado, 3, 2, 1, boom!